All right, hello and welcome to another Expert Insight interview. My name is John Goldin from Sales Pop, online sales magazine, and Pipeliners CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego. And today, delighted to be joined by Ryan Crittenden, who is in Colorado Springs, Colorado. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here with you. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm fantastic. And Ryan has Excel Coaching and Development, which he leads. His PhD offering specialized strengths-based coaching for leaders and aspiring leaders. And with personalized coaching packages, teamworks, online courses, Excel Coaching empowers clients to gain clarity, motivation, fulfillment in their leadership roles. That's what we're going to talk about today is leader as a coach. And I think it's really interesting, Ryan, because uh, whenever the subject of coaching or coaches comes up, right, it always is fascinating that at the end of the day, 90% of people have no idea how to coach, and
Hmm.
it's not coach in a professional sense, and it's not really their fault because nobody is really trained in how to be a coach, generally speaking, and most people's previous experience of a coach is probably one from a sports team or something from high school, like the volleyball or the football, whatever, which is somebody basically shouting at you and telling you what to do,
Right.
which is the antithesis of real coaching, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So when you approach this subject, I mean, first of all, how do you help people to understand what coaching is and why coaching is important and why it's important for people in leadership positions?
Yeah, like you said, people kind of either have a weird experience with coaching or they have a really bad one.
Hmm.
And then also coaching is kind of a buzzword.
Yep.
So like you said, we always relate coaching to a football coach, or like I played basketball in high school. So it's the guy that I went to that knew everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So when we look at the leader as a coach, uh, what I see a lot initially is the leader dictating down to their employee or subordinate what to do, how to do it, when to do it, how fast or how slow, and all that kind of stuff. And they're actually really more micromanagers than a
Hmm.
coach.
Yeah.
So when we into shifting from that micromanagement to a coach, the leader really has to be okay with, I hired them for a reason, so I'm going to give them the freedom. But then this is where the coaching comes along. It's when the leader starts to understand that they have the answers inside of them, and they're able.
Mm,
And then the coach asks some questions, draws out those answers, um, and and then in the same way, they actually help the employee create their own action plan going forward. So you have
yeah.
actually greater engagement. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really interesting what you say there about the coach. The real coach is somebody who draws out the answers from the
Hmm.
other person, because that's a very different approach from sort of going, I know all the answers, Ryan, and I'm just going to give them to you, and then you're just going to put them into operation. And I
Hmm.
think, and the other part, the point that you made there, which I think is an extremely important one, is uh, the days have been. I mean, once upon a time, yeah, you may have looked up to your leader, manager, whatever, as the person with all the answers, but nowadays, that's not true because the jobs are so specific, the skills are so specific
Yeah.
and stuff that you can't possibly be an expert in everything. Therefore, you need to operate through other people.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that actually when a leader starts to develop like, hey, I need to actually have a partnership with my employees. Um, when I start to see that happen and when I've experienced it myself,
Mhm.
um, man, it actually becomes a lot more fun to be a leader. Because then you don't have to stress out about everything,
Yeah,
or have your fingers in every part. So,
yeah. And when you're working with when you're working to develop coaches, how do you get them over that hump of, because oftentimes, you know successful people just think, okay, I figured out the best way to do it. Now I just got to have Ryan do it the same way. And the problem is, when you're a leader, is you have to allow people to do things in different ways as long as they're getting the
mhm.
result and doing it the right way. That always seems to be a difficult thing for a lot of leaders.
Yeah, it definitely can be. So there's the foundations of a team. What the very foundation is trust. Do I trust this person? And if you're not there yet, like I've worked with some folks where it just takes some time. Like
Hmm.
they've not used to it. And it's the same thing. It's like, what's our goal? What's kind of the time frame, and are we willing to work towards it? So if you're in that spot of I'm not used to this, seems like a great idea. One, just communicate that with folks. Like this is the way I'm trying to lead. I'm a work in progress.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that, Ryan, because I think that's what. Because I'm always hearing about people saying leaders should be vulnerable and this and the other, and I always think it's an unfortunate choice of words. We often get into this. It's like whoever came up with the term soft skills, right, did a
Mhm.
disservice to all of these skills because
Right.
they're so easily sort of, well, they're soft skills, I can push them aside right now because it's not that important, instead of saying no, they're
Mhm.
actually really important. um, and so I think it's really important that people understand the gravity of these things.
Yeah, totally. I completely agree with that.
Yeah. So tell me, what is when you're working with teams, what are some of the areas that you're seeing that need even more attention than they used to?
Mm. Yeah, what I largely start off with, I do a strengths-based approach, so I
Sure.
use the Gallup Clifton Strengths Assessment as my foundational tool. Um, and we really spend when I work with a team, every individual spends what I call strengths foundations, where it's one-on-one with me and them. What what I think is the hardest thing to understand is for someone is one, who they are and who they're not.
Mm,
And that's one of the things that we really work on during the Strengths Foundations time. So when we, do this deep dive into our strengths, we also understand who we're not. But then when we go back to the team, everybody's been through that process. Um, and so when we all kind of pull each other's profile up, we're like, everybody's like, oh, that makes sense. That's why you do that because, you have this strength, or yeah, you definitely are not that way. And that's
mm.
totally cool. We're
What's
able to
what's
affirm
what's
both
an
ways.
example? What Just give you an example of some of a who you are and a who you're not.
Yeah. So if we're familiar with the assessment a little bit, the assessment, I break it down into three sections. The top section is what I call signature talents. And talents are what can be into strengths, developed into strengths. The middle part of the assessment is what I call supporting talents. And then the bottom part of the assessment is non pattern talents, where they're just not how you're wired. It's not how
Mm,
you're designed. And for me, an example, I always kind of say that I got hired because of my top five, but a lot of my bosses always wanted me to be in my bottom five. But I'm not, that's not who I am. I'm not
mhm,
wired that way. So I actually have like zero growth potential in my bottom five, but I have an exponential amount of growth potential in my top five. So an example, number one, my number two is one of my favorite talents, and it's maximizer, where I like taking things and making it excellent,
mm,
but it's an inward competition. And I'm gonna say
right.
competition where it's a lot of things are inward, where I'm my own benchmark. Am I growing? Am I doing better? My number 34 is competition. And that's a really neat talent where it's external,
Right.
where you're able to, you know, rally the team and um, kind of help everybody kind of push forward and stuff. That's not how I am naturally.
Mhm.
So if I try to do that, ad is it's not going to last long. It's really fake and it's not genuine. So that's kind of an example of who you are and who you're not.
Yeah, and one of the things that really highlights, I think, because you touched on this a moment ago, but and is especially important for leaders and coaching, is to coach to strengths, because for some reason
Hmm.
we're hardwired as humans for this thing where I always use the example, Ryan, of the annual performance review, right? We've all had to sit through those horrible things or do them
Right.
ourselves for other people. And if you know, most managers, when they do them, they'll go, Ryan, here's 2 things you did really well this year. Now here's 54 things I need you to work on,
Right.
right? And as you said, I mean, most of those things they want you to work on are things that you're not good at. You're never going to be good at. You've no interest in being good at. So why am I, as a manager or a leader, suddenly so focused on the things you don't do well, rather than looking at saying, "Wow, Ryan is fantastic at this. I need to figure out how I can get him to do more of this, and really optimize that part." So, and I think that's a big opportunity missed by a lot of leaders.
Mm. Yeah, I completely agree. I think we miss a lot when it comes to reviews. The last time I had a boss, I was what I think every meeting was. I was like everything I just did bad at. Instead of having a conversations, instead of maybe being there's maybe other things we could call it,
Sure.
but those things that we maybe do need to do because it is just straight our job.
Hmm.
Like someone's got to do it. That's me.
Right.
But let's have the conversation of what which one of my strengths can I use to do that job? And I think that'd be more of a coach saying, "Hey, let's what strengths of yours? Okay,
Hmm.
I'm going to use my maximizer strength.
Yeah.
How do you want to apply your maximizer strength?" And then it's like, yeah, how would I apply my maximizer strength to something I really hate, but I want to make it better? Um, and I think you start having a much better conversation when it's saying, "Hey, you have a strength for this. What strength? How do you want to use it?" And go from there. I think that's a much better approach.
Mhm. And then Ryan, another little wrinkle in this today is the fact that work is so different, yeah, and
Mm,
companies are constructed so differently. I mean, now we have everything from people working in physical offices together to coming into the office a few days a week to, hybrid working to being fully remote to being other side of the globe, whatever. But there's a lot of challenges now for a leader to be able to develop and coach and mentor all of his employees, if some of them he never sees. I mean, he may
mhm.
see virtually, but he doesn't see, or she doesn't see them, and they're spread out. I mean, those are kind of relatively new challenges.
Yeah, I actually was on a meeting today earlier where the CEO of the company, there was about 9 people,
Hmm.
in the room, and that was the challenge. The CEO is, "Hey, we're virtual. We're a whole virtual company. They don't have any physical locations." And I had the pleasure of just being the, uh, fly on the wall in the
Sure.
meeting, but it was neat that, people are wrestling with this, and
Hmm.
one of the things that they had kind of brought up and I'd been kind of talking about too is um, just reassuring everybody that you belong here.
Right.
Um, and then that kind of creates a different engagement um, because people aren't engaged if they don't feel like they belong.
And I think as part of that, then it requires a higher level of communication.
Yeah.
I mean, and especially if you because you're not passing the person in the corridor or whatever,
Hmm.
it needs that higher level of communication, but it needs consistent communication too, because there's nothing more, I think, ways that remote workers feel disconnected is if there's big gaps in communication, or if when you do have your meetings, if they get moved a lot, maybe I was looking forward to catching up with Ryan today. Ryan suddenly canceled on me, so we'll do catch up next week. These are the
Hmm.
things I think that you could have popped by my cube and said, "Listen, John, sorry, can't do it today, blah, blah, blah." And I'd be like, "Oh, yeah, cool, we'll do it next week." But remote, I don't have that. So now I'm just imagining things.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a good point. I think there does take a different level of intentionality
Hmm.
to remote work. And then also kind of a lot of grace too.
Yeah.
Um, if a meeting does get canceled, um, we'll try not to take it personally. But if there's a reason why, like every week your team meeting gets canceled or something, something needs to change. Either, the meeting or the manager really needs to take a look at themselves and say, you know,
Hmm.
why are we canceling this? Do we do we have a purpose for this meeting?
Right.
So
And I,
those might be a few things to think
yeah, and
about.
I think that's really important when it comes to coaching, though, because if I'm forever canceling or moving our coaching meeting, the message you're getting is the coaching isn't that important. It's not that
Right.
important to me. And I think we have to be careful what we communicate.
Mm. Yeah. Because I know, yeah, if you hire an external coach, you hire your own coach, you hire me or whatever,
Yeah.
and I cancel, you're probably not hiring me again,
Yeah.
right? And so it's kind of the same thing with the manager, like you were saying, like the manager needs to keep showing that, hey, when we come and meet together, like it's because you're important.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So what are some of the key traits that you would say or key skills that a good coach needs to have?
Mm. Man, one, authenticity. Like, be yourself. There's a million people out in the world that claim to be a coach. They throw it up on a website.
Mhm.
Um, and they don't, like for an example, I coach with the standards from the International Coach Federation. Many people don't.
Mhm.
So in that market, I just need to be myself. And also another thing to look at when you're maybe looking at a coach or a coach should have is some sort of education, some sort of training, and a process for coaching. And then another thing would just be maybe like how we were just saying are you reliable? Are
Mm.
you able to follow up with your client the way you said? Do you keep your word? So do you have integrity?
Mhm. Just getting back to the that interesting one, as you said, the education and training, because as you said, I mean, there's nothing stopping anybody from saying they're a coach,
Mm-hmm.
right? And a lot of people have built successful coaching businesses, obviously without any
Mm-hmm.
formal education, and they've used their work experience and their own talents and that. But generally speaking, obviously it's going to be much better if you actually engage in some education and training and get a grounding in it, because as we said from the beginning, it's not something that comes naturally to people. It
It
may
does
be
not.
one in a million, but generally speaking, it does not come naturally to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the things I've run into the most with someone who claims to be a coach. It's just not natural because they want to
Mhm.
teach. They want to in a good way. They want to dictate
Yeah.
down. They want to help people, and that's totally great. But that's not necessarily coaching. I'm working with someone right now actually to implement a coaching program into their company, and he calls me up and he says, "Ryan, I'm doing all this stuff, and I'm getting burnt out. I'm 3 months
Mm.
on the job." And I'm like, "Well, tell me more about what you're doing." Um, and he goes, "Well, I'm meeting with with employees, and it turns into me telling them how to do their job, which is partly what I need to do because it's HR and just all this stuff." And I
Mhm.
was like, "Man, you're gonna get burnt out. First thing, you and your boss need to sit down and define what you guys actually want out of a coaching program. What does coaching mean to you? Why are these people coming to you for coaching?" So it's not natural, but it's great to say the word coach.
Yeah, no, it is, and it's funny. It's like what you just said. It was like I'm kind of telling everybody how to do their jobs, right, or trying to explain to them. I mean, again, as we said earlier, that's not the role of coaching. I mean, that's the role of a
Hmm.
trainer. Perhaps if you're
Totally.
training job skills, that's fine. It's not the role of a coach to tell you how to do your job.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, so it's a very unnatural thing, but yeah, when you're able to learn a process, and at least in more reps you have, the more natural it becomes.
Yeah, no, just like absolutely, just like everything else, and you need somebody like yourself, to maybe guide you and train you how to be a coach, so
Hmm.
that you don't start off on the wrong footing, and you don't start off with the idea of just do what I do and you'll be grand.
Right.
Follow what I do. Have you ever tried that? It's like, it's always when somebody just goes, just copy what I do. And you go, but you don't even know what you do, right? You don't even have that like properly laid out.
Right. And you're like, I was just successful one day. I just do what I did.
Yeah,
Actually, if
exactly.
I can share a story,
Please do.
going back to that, what is natural for you may not be natural for someone else. I number of years ago, I got flown down to Florida to work with another coach who had coached a team, and he had never done team coaching before. And so I'm sitting there with him the night before. We're going through the agenda for the day, and he goes, "Ryan, I can't remember the exact, but Ryan, what if during the time I'm up there, someone asks a question that's, you know, way off kind of topic, and but they want to explore it." And I go, "Oh, well, that's easy. Yeah, you could, you can do this, 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 this,
Mhm.
this, this." And I gave him all these kind of different
Yeah.
examples. Um, and he goes, "Ryan, where is the strategic talent for you? We're strengths coaches." And I was like, "Oh, it's number 4 for me. I love it. It's natural." He goes, "It's number 34 for me. It's
Mm.
not me."
Right.
And I was like, "Oh man, yeah. I was I'm doing to you what we've been telling people not to do to each other, right?" But we slowed down. We were able to work through, like some different kind of strategies, and not in a strategic way, but different ways, different tools for him to do, um, to use in those moments. But yeah, one of those, it's not natural,
Yeah.
but sometimes, things are.
Yeah, 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 and it's something you gotta practice and keep on top
Yep.
of. Well, listen, Ryan, this has been fascinating. Thank you so much for all of your insights. All of Ryan's information will be below this video, but before we go, please do share a little more about you and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm in Colorado Springs, Colorado, with my family. I do strengths-based leadership coaching. I love working with individual leaders as they, level up themselves personally or professionally. And then also like working with teams to help them do the same.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thanks again, Ryan. Thank you for watching and listening. Don't forget to subscribe, share, comment. We love to hear from you. Thanks again. Thank you for watching, listening, and I'll see you all again very soon. Thank you.